And we're going to start off the day today with a discussion entitled Remote Learning to Blended Learning, Using the Power of Digital Learning to Enhance the New Student Experience. This is by Heap, who's the Associate Superintendent for Enterprise Services and Applications from the Georgia Department of Education, as well as Sarah Newman, who's the Supervisor of District Support from Georgia Virtual Learning. So I'm going to turn over the presentation rights to you, Jay.
Well, thank you, Leilani and the Learning Council for having us again this year. Sarah and I are hopefully take up a few minutes of your morning and share some information that we've had. We know that over the past 8 months that everybody has been in the same boat, trying to best organize and provide a variety of instructional opportunities to students in sometimes less than familiar environment. And so as part of the Georgia Virtual School, they operate under tech services at the Georgia Department of Education. Both Sarah and I have been involved in online learning for a number of years. And I've got a few things to have us kind of think about as we look at what happened in March to what is happening now and what seems to be happening even more as we approach the end of November and December. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes on, what we've seen and how best to make the transition from remote to a blended learning environment. Some of the trends that we're seeing from the state of Georgia and what's going on with schools and students. And then Sarah is our expert in special needs, and there have been a lot of questions coming both to the Department of Ed and to the Georgia Virtual School about how we accommodate and how special needs students can be successful in a remote or virtual environment. And so a couple things that we have seen happening inside of Georgia is we have a variety of schools using different models. Of course, in March, the main focus was a switch from face-to-face to remote learning. And that took a variety of models in the spring. Now we have a varied models, very varied selection of models as schools came back in August, anywhere from full virtual options to full face-to-face. And now schools are experiencing various changes to those schedules as we experience increases and decreases in local virus exposures. So one thing that we wanted to kind of talk about is, when we started, we had remote learning. And as being a part of the virtual school, state schools programs for several years, virtual schools made a big push to assure that there was a difference between people calling remote learning and virtual learning. And so typically these are the characteristics of remote learning. Generally, they've been synchronous. They try to replicate the existing classroom format, not only the format, but also the scheduling. So it's designed with a whole class format, with often having the content created by the classroom teacher, and using various resources, whether it's publisher resources and various other items, or having to create them themselves. And remote learning is typically considered an emergency or a just-in-time solution. Schools move back and forth between online learning face-to-face and remote learning through the school year. So virtual learning to us is often asynchronous, and so it provides flexibility in time and place. We find that in our case for the virtual school, students need that and want that. So we distinguish part of the difference in virtual is the flexibility than the remote learning. It can also provide personalized and small group instruction. Virtual learning is typically a little more planned, so district approved curricula is often included. Oftentimes teachers gather or did gather through the summer to create material for their students through the year, and that is shared usually through the school or the district. And there's usually pre-planned delivery models in teacher training. So schools are using some sort of a learning management system or a delivery tool. It could be a Google Classroom, a Microsoft tool, and usually they're providing some sort of teacher training, communicating with students, how to organize students' days, and things like that. One thing that we're really trying to, as a state organization and through the department, is to move schools into this blended option. And so we've talked about blended learning for years, and it seems like it's now having to kind of be the norm. And we kind of view this as a way that if we use blended learning correctly, students who are typically attending face-to-face classes, if for some reason, now it seems to be the coronavirus, but in other situations it could be weather, it could be some kind of other need to close the schools. In a blended model, students move between instructional models much more easily and more comfortably. And so as we begin to figure out the best way to serve students in this new environment, blended learning is often a great option that allows the teacher to use the technology inside of the classroom, and then regardless of where the student has to be located, they're comfortable. And so there's a lot of different models regarding blended learning. You can find them all over the internet, and some great examples. Clearly, they involve both a face-to-face and a virtual opportunity. That can be scheduled time, as a lot of our schools in the state are doing, with alternate day schedules, face-to-face some days, virtual the other days, or as needed. We have heard lately that several schools are having to close this week. And so they'll go virtual. They're on Thanksgiving break next week, and they may start back face-to-face at the end of the month. If you have a good blended model, students move between the two models without much disruption. It could be a disruption to the family regarding parent work schedules and things like that, but students move easier if the technology is used both in the classroom and in the virtual environment. It does require that there's a stable technology platform, and that is a challenge in some areas of Georgia. The department has just made a big investment in mobile hotspots and has provided those opportunities to school districts so that every school building can have an external access point. That is managed by the Georgia school districts, but we are trying to provide as much access so that students can use these new learning models. It does provide some flexible learning options for students, parents, and communities. So as schools move between face-to-face and virtual learning, the communities can get involved where it's applicable and safe. and use community centers or outdoor opportunities for students to meet. And then it's applicable not only for student learning, but for professional development as well. So we think that's very important, that when teachers are learning how to implement these tools, that they are also doing it in the same environment that they'll be using for students. One thing is to provide a lot of flexible training for students, for teachers. There are a lot of opportunities that are available online. In our case, we want to focus on K-12. There are a lot of higher ed professional learning options and how to deliver online content. Those tend to differ a bit because they work with an adult population, and so some of the strategies are less applicable to K-12, especially as you're getting down into primary and middle school students. Georgia Virtual, which is part of the DOE, does have an online professional development program that provides courses like digital learning days, how to communicate with asynchronous sessions, and those type of things. If districts are creating their own material, then certainly there's some guides, the national standards for quality online learning, the NSQs put out by the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance, along with Quality Matters. These are available online. I've included the links, so Derek or Leilani, I'll be happy to send you this presentation if you need to post it somewhere, and those links would be available. So good opportunities for teachers and students throughout the internet and several training opportunities. There's also a ton of open educational resources, and so the opportunity to train teachers and use these tools. We suggest that teachers know how to use a license and how to adapt the materials to the schools. Districts can compile a library of learning objects or have teachers go and research and find them themselves. We do support the idea of teachers not only consuming but also contributing back to the open educational resource. It's still very difficult to find many K-5 learning objects. There are printable worksheets and things like that, but the manipulatives and the online digital tools are still growing, and we see more of those in the private application spaces for Android and iPhone, and I know that there are a lot of parents who are moving in that direction to find the content. But still, Georgia is working on some ideas to provide a public opportunity for accessing some of these learning objects that Georgia teachers create. But there are also some good OER sites and repositories in which parents or teachers can use to find material, and it's available at varying levels. The higher you go into high school and higher ed, the more material is available. We do suggest that teachers or parents kind of preview that material before turning their student loose. A couple things that we are seeing also, the original trend, and some of this information just came out today and yesterday. The original trend in August was for a larger group of students in Georgia to opt for virtual learning. Those efforts have been met with both successes and obstacles for parents and students. Very hard for a student to move from several years of face-to-face to all of a sudden being totally online. There are reports from districts that more students are opting to return to the face-to-face option in the spring semester. And so we're hoping that as schools do bring those students back in, that they do implement a blended tool so that as necessary, students can move from face-to-face to a virtual opportunity without having disruption or discomfort trying to keep making that environment change. Quickly, and then I'll turn this over to Sarah to speak about some of the special needs and how those can apply to students who need the accommodations, but also students who don't. So as students come together, many of the parents are expecting as districts move between face-to-face and online is the replication of the school day and the typical teaching model. We see that as parents communicate with Georgia Virtual regarding different aspects of the program. Georgia Virtual is a supplemental program, so our model has always been asynchronous and a flexible model. And as students come to us, some of the expectations are from parents and students are different. And so we see a varying model of districts operating either in a flexible asynchronous model or replicating the school day, typically with shortened sessions or multiple sessions for students so that they can provide synchronous learning. So 4 quick little tips. Make sure we train teachers on synchronous learning models. It's certainly a new skill for teachers. They're presenting synchronously during the day to a group of faces sitting in front of them and their students. The synchronous online model is a little bit different in how they communicate. If it's possible, they should try to maintain the flexibility in online environments. So as parents' work schedules change, as moving from face-to-face to remote, the opportunities for maybe multiple synchronous sessions or scheduled synchronous sessions that students can choose from is certainly a plus. The focus of the synchronous sessions, in our opinion, should be focused on the student interaction and discussions. The lecture type and presentation can be delivered asynchronously, so students can view a lecture or a presentation or a PowerPoint before they come to a synchronous session, so the teacher can use that valuable time to answer questions and create discussion and an interaction between the students. So that's kind of in a nutshell regarding remote to virtual to blended. I can certainly provide more information about what's going on in the state if there are some questions at the end. But at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah and let her speak a little bit on how we serve all students and how districts can certainly provide those advantages of blended and online learning to their special needs students.
Thank you, Jay. I am excited about this. This is something I'm very passionate about, talking about how special education students can benefit from digital solutions and online learning. And I just want to preface this by saying a lot of what I'm going to talk about is not just limited to special education populations. It really spans all student populations. So first of all, your technology can absolutely be beneficial to special education students across all learning models when you're implementing digital or technology-based solutions into the student learning. They have access to new or different tools at their fingertips and hopefully also some increased flexibility. the technology really brings a new dimension to learning for students with special needs. They can discover new ways to learn, new tools to learn with, and certainly demonstrate their mastery of knowledge in various ways. And also students acquire new skills and adapt to working in a variety of environments. I think through this pandemic, this has probably become apparent to many of us in our places of work that we do have to adapt to environmental changes, and being able to be flexible and adapt to different working situations is certainly helpful. So as far as accessibility and accommodations, of course, this is a big topic when you're talking about special education students. So we'll talk about this in tech-based learning models. So first of all, your technology-based models, it does offer access to operating system and software accessibility tools. And your learning platforms often integrate tools to access content and accommodate your student needs. So many software and computer operating systems offer those accessibility features to support vision, hearing, mobility, and learning differences. These tools and features are really becoming more readily available, much more user-friendly, and I think by the month these tools are becoming more robust. Many software programs also offer user-friendly accessibility checkers. So not only do students have tools at their fingertips to better access content and use while they're working and learning, but we also have accessibility checkers to ensure that the items that the resources that we are providing our students do have accessibility taken into account, and that has been checked for basic accessibility functionality. Communication methods. This is so important in any model. Communicating with our students. We have to have effective communication to reach them. And when we're communicating in digital models, it opens up a variety of different communication methods to meet the needs and preferences of our students. Consider email, synchronous session communication, where students can use hand raising or the chat or the microphone and video, texting, messaging tools, even audio and video recording capabilities. And then also extended time is typically something that our special needs populations I would say it's a very common accommodation for extended time, whether it be on tests and quizzes or in the time that they need to do their work. So many times usually using digital models does kind of naturally allow for that extended time. We're not confined to the time where we're meeting in a face-to-face classroom during a period of the day. And of course, as Jay talked quite a bit about, a library of resources. Using technology in learning models, you have the ability to create quality resources and house those and reuse them and have them provided for ongoing student access. Class notes, recordings of synchronous sessions, all of these can be housed and available to students for ongoing. So the benefits of flexible learning environments. I think it's important to consider well-balanced models that will provide both structure and flexibility. Consider the amount of synchronous time versus asynchronous time if you are in a blended remote or online environment. the asynchronous time can be structured when communicating clear expectations for both the classroom and assignments, that type of thing, communicating due dates, and that flexibility that can be built in can be invaluable to some of our special needs populations. And again, while Jay mentioned that using digital learning models really provides kind of seamless transition from remote to blended, or even face-to-face if you're continuing to use your technology-based instructional solutions, it can lessen the stress and anxiety for students and families when you're having to transition between models. Not only that, but utilizing technology regularly, it allows for some degree of routine. Students know where to go, where to find everything, how to log in. Consider your students that are medically fragile, chronically ill, struggling with mental illness, those types of situations. With more flexible environments, they're able to schedule medical appointments with little disruption. They can communicate seamlessly no matter if they are present or not able to be present that day. They can still email. They still have the ability to continuously communicate with their teachers. And also, a lot of our students, especially with the chronic illness, many students on medications, that type of thing, with the asynchronous components of instruction, or even with more of the face-to-face or synchronous components, when they have access to resources on an ongoing basis, like we mentioned previously, it allows them to have a window into the classroom even if they cannot be present. It allows them to work during an optimal time of day if one day they are not able to be physically present. So they're not totally missing out on the instruction. They have resources that they can access. Special education and special education support and services. Of course, this is big. Placement options. What placement is the student in? What services are they getting? So first of all, personalizing the student experience. Aspects of digital learning absolutely allow for some easy personalization. The way you leave feedback. Offering various resources to support student preferences and needs, communicating in ways that students feel comfortable, and again, the ability for students to use tools that they find to be helpful in their learning or to meet accommodations. Remediation or modifications for those who need it. You can provide that support in digital environments. You can remediate students without others in the class even knowing that remediation is happening, and get them back to where they need to be with the rest of the class. I'll give you a personal example now. I have my own students are learning remotely right now and have been since March. I have a second grader who struggles significantly with the physical task of handwriting. You can see when he has a writing assignment and it requires him to write with his hand. It becomes a fairly negative experience for him. And I guess I did not realize to what degree this was impacting his ability to really participate in the writing process. So we had one day where his writing was not getting done, and finally I said to him, well, you have to hand something in. Let's try using dictation, your speech to text. This has actually really changed his experience in participating in the writing process. That assignment, I think, was the first time I had seen him excited about writing. He was able to inject his humor into it and really develop his ideas. And as a second grader, think that really felt good to him, to be able to finally express himself and no longer be stunted with his writing because the physical task of handwriting is holding him back. If we didn't have this remote experience, I'm not sure that he would have this positive experience now and actually look forward to the writing process. So that's just a personal, some personal experience that we've had with some remediation and modification that his teacher's now able to provide him in a digital environment. Something else I think that can be really helpful to support special education students, or all students, peer buddy initiatives. Of course, this can look different depending on, the level. If you're with elementary, middle school, or high school, this can definitely look different. In high school, this may be more of a note share arrangement or something like that. But peer buddies can really help form community in a remote environment or a blended environment. It can help blossom student relationships, and this is definitely a concern that many have when you're working in especially fully remote, and student interaction can be limited. Well, peer buddy initiatives can be helpful to the teacher. It can be helpful to students. And it can definitely grow those relationships between your regular ed and your special ed students and really form community in a classroom. And of course, with your special education models, we have co-teaching, push-in, small group, one-on-one sessions for related services or special education support, consultative models. I think when this pandemic happened, there really were a lot of questions. How do we meet the needs of individual students when we're not all together in the traditional face-to-face classroom? How can related services such as speech be provided, and how can we continue to accommodate students? It can be done. There are robust communication platforms and learning management systems that allow a lot of this to happen. Sometimes it does take a little more creativity, and it may take a little trial and error to see what really works. And it probably doesn't look the same as it does in a face-to-face classroom, but these components can absolutely be carried out in blended, remote, online, or hybrid models. So data to support special education when you are working in digital environments. I think this is something that is one of my favorite areas, and I find exciting because I really do think that the data that is available through digital software platforms can really help understand students better. So learning platforms absolutely provide a variety of automatically tracked data points. And please keep in mind some data will be more robust than others, and that certainly varies from one platform to another. Generally, the data is beyond, I think, what we can collect reasonably in a traditional face-to-face environment. I mean, consider page views, login data, time spent on items. Some will even show you the collaborations that your students have had with one another, participation levels, auto-tracked grade data, like items missing, items that have been turned in late, quiz, test data. I mean, the list goes on and on. I have a little image here of just one sliver of data that the learning management system uses that we use with Georgia Virtual. And when a student issue comes my way, this is the first place I go. I just get a quick snippet of, are they missing a lot of work? Or is this student generally turning work in late? How are their grades been recently? And what is their activity in the class looking like compared to others? So this can be really helpful information just at a quick glimpse to see what's going on, and then you can dig much deeper. I will say that learning platforms and your digital software provides typically consistent, accurate, and objective data points. I think this is important. We are human, and we definitely have preconceived ideas of what our students can do, what they struggle with. And then there's also the emotional piece when we're working with our students. So these data points can absolutely provide us a clearer look into situations to better find the root of the problem or really discover what is working well. Something, though, to consider is that data points do not tell the whole story. So there's always a need to balance, looking at the students as a person, their situations, their scenarios, as well as the data that we get from our digital platforms. So we can definitely get different perspectives on our students' progress, their abilities, as well as their preferences. A lot of times I find you can really evaluate the effectiveness of accommodations. I think a very straightforward example is extended time on tests and quizzes. In a digital platform, you can usually go in and look to see how much time a student is spending on assessments, how they're working through assessments, their work habits, their patterns. Are they performing better on one type of question than another? That type of information can be extremely helpful, and it can really provide you with good information. Do they need extended time on tests and quizzes? Do they not? Is there something else that we should be looking at where maybe the extended time is not necessarily what we need to be looking at? And I think one last thing is that having digital platforms where there is information and students have assignments and feedback, they have it in one place. They can look back on past assessments or rubrics, feedback on assignments, their library of resources, their history of communication, and it can be just helpful to them. It can help develop executive functioning skills. So just having that can be beneficial really for all students. And last but not least, Georgia Virtual Learning Professional Learning does offer 2 special needs course offerings. These both, I think, they were kind of born from just the experience that our special needs team has had over the years working with a variety of student populations. Our first course, Online Support for Special Needs, really is just an introductory course that would be appropriate for all teachers just to successfully accommodate special needs students online. In our second course, Customized Learning in the Online Classroom, this started out as a course that was geared towards special needs, but we quickly learned it really is applicable to any and all students, and it builds on the ideas of our first course, and it is really meant to kind of put ideas out there, and teachers can then just build on those ideas and use their creativity to really provide customized and personalized strategies for all of their learners. So that is what I have, and I really appreciate you all listening in today.
Hi.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Leilani.
No, hi. No, go ahead, Jay. I was just going to interject questions and anything anyone else wanted to say on our questions panel.
Yeah, absolutely. We have provided the information and happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, well, we have one from Victor Karkar. Victor, I'm finding you so I can unmute you. Okay, I think you're unmuted. Yeah, go ahead, Victor.
Yes. Hi, Jay and Sarah. Thank you so much. I actually ended up having 2 questions. One question was very simple for Sarah at the end. That screenshot that you showed and you referenced the LMS that you folks are using, I was just curious which LMS that is. And then a question for, I guess, Jay, or maybe both of you. One of the things that we've seen is that increasingly under remote and blended learning, parents are becoming a bigger part of the students' educational experience. And district leaders are apparently interested in having vendors provide workshops or support to parents so that they can support their students at home. I wonder if you all have any thoughts on that, or if you've seen that happening in Georgia districts.
You know, that's a great question, and the answer to your first question is Canvas. And so we have seen the same thing through Georgia Virtual, more so this year than any of the other 14 years. The online learning environment is always a little more open than a classroom with a door and a teacher and a group of kids. Parents typically can't wander through a school and pop in on any class they want to. And we've seen that is different in online, where students are at home and parents are sitting in, whether it be in a synchronous session or are moving through classwork with students, whether it be content or assessment and those type of things. I think the notion of providing PD for parents is very, very important, because this is not only a new experience for students, but also for parents. From a Georgia Virtual perspective, we have a couple models coming up to add to our PD platform through a large grant that we got earlier in the year. So we will be doing some pieces on personalized learning, both for students, parents, teachers, and parents or the community, as well as other opportunities for things that we are dealing with and looking at how we make the resources available to both teachers and parents. And in that aspect, I do think we would need to increase the parent awareness and provide some short opportunities that parents can begin to learn about the online environment and the importance of allowing their students to continue to participate themselves and work through that. And so I can see why vendors, and I've heard success stories and struggles from districts regarding the change to remote learning.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jay, and thank you, Sarah. I have another question. Obviously, I always have tons of questions. You know me, Jay.
Sure.
So there's an implied delta between what is happening in the remote face-to-face hybrid universe and the virtual, because there's a substantial difference in construct in terms of the deltas in achievement. What would you say to what is now happening across Georgia? Because we know, looking at other states, there's the start of a series of reports coming in from districts who have not done this very correctly. They're on Zoom like all day with 5-year-olds, and it's not working to try to move the brick and mortar into online. So what kind of delta are you seeing in terms of the difference between the two performance?
So that's a great question. Of course, as a supplemental program, as Georgia Virtual being a supplemental program, we have seen great success in students who are taking our courses. Now let me provide that. We started with a high school 9-12 course catalog. We've increased that to 6-12, and we don't do anything in the K-5 area. And so, a lot of the data that you're getting is performance data in K-5, and I haven't seen, one reason we didn't go there is because we haven't seen a lot of research that says independent learning or full-time options in K-5 is highly successful. It is for some of selected students, but it really relies a lot on the parent and the teacher working together to bring along that non-reader or early reader. And so we don't have numbers as a virtual school, don't have numbers on those.
And I would suppose that you also have some uniqueness to the population within the virtual school anyway. So any analysis would have to, include, sort of a characterization of the differences between that particular population and the broad population in order to arrive at a true statistical representation.
We would have to do a little bit. Now we have compared our population is very similar to the state of Georgia, our enrollment, but again, it's before this pandemic, it was a selective group. So students basically chose to take an online experience through us. Our special needs percentage actually meets or is a little bit higher than what the state average per school is. So we are serving a large number of special needs students. We have a few differences in minority populations, but not huge. And so if you look at it just demographically, it's close to the state demographics, but it's the difference probably between us now, and we've experienced a growth of a little 80% of more than what we had last year, so 180% growth over fall of 2019, is that for some students, online learning wasn't an option. It was a requirement. That's the school districts chose either to send students for many online classes or even select ones that a student maybe not have opted for. But if the entire district went to a remote option, then those students, they may, the teacher may not have capacity or they may have made some other things. So we do see a difference with some students. Of course, the semester isn't over, so we haven't been able to kind of do a real comparison, with that. And we will certainly do that, and we found the same successes. We found we have anecdotal evidence of parents and students saying, this just isn't for me. I'm going back to face-to-face learning, and that's fine. Statistics show that if a student takes one online course, they'll be more successful in that course than taking 5 online courses. That's kind of true with anything. If you can just do one instead of 4, you'll do better. But overall, I think we have, because it's not new to us, our teachers and our staff are very comfortable in that environment. But we certainly will be analyzing the data at the end of the year. Unfortunately, we don't have milestone data from March, and there's a big discussion in Georgia right now, probably happening this afternoon and tomorrow, regarding the weight of the assessments, the milestone assessments for this year. So we're hoping to have some data to compare that. But we will look at that and be happy to share that with anyone as we dig through that, in early spring. We'll certainly want to look at the fall numbers and see how first-time students did, how multiple course students did, and how returning students may be doing as well.
Okay. I have so many questions, and we're not going to have enough time for all of them. So I want to go over to Sarah. And so you basically were talking about a little bit of the personal needs or special needs personalization. And you were mentioning how to take a different perspective. Can you give that a little bit of concrete, sort of imagery so I can understand what you're talking about in terms of how you take a different viewpoint?
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to. So, like Jay mentioned, Georgia Virtual School is a supplemental program. I find a lot of times when we have a student taking a class with us and the local school is having an IEP meeting, or they have a student maybe going through the RTI or MTSS process, they reach out and they ask for data. And I can provide them a lot of data. And a lot of times I think what in the face-to-face environment, we are using testing data and formative and summative assessment data and that type of thing. However, when you provide data, like I had mentioned, quiz and test data, how much time they're spending, what order are students working through on their quizzes and tests, how much time are they spending on certain types of questions, it really gives you a peek into, in a different way, their work habits. And I know as a primarily asynchronous program, I also can look in to see the students' work habits. Are they, regularly visiting content, or are they visiting content shortly before assignments are due? You can really look in to see, you just get a window into different work habits and what is working and what might not be working. This student is really spending a lot of time, visiting content and using the resources, and they're really engaged, but they really are not performing on the types of assessments that they are taking. Maybe they need something else. And I will say, I used the example of my own child and his struggles with the physical task of handwriting. I never realized that, how difficult that was. And it was such a kick to see the first time he used that dictation software. I mean, he was laughing and having a blast doing his little journal prompt, his second grade journal prompt. And so after that, I did get in touch with his teacher, and because he does have a diagnosis of Tourette's syndrome, this, handwriting is typically a struggle when you have that diagnosis. So I had been working with an SST team anyways, but that different perspective and seeing that this was really beneficial to him in engaging in this entire writing process. It gave me some. I'm sorry. It gave me an opening to kind of discuss what we could do to kind of benefit him more fully with writing.
That's great. That's great. So what I'm hearing and interpreting here is that essentially what you're doing within the special needs arena is that you're identifying points of logic as to what might be the issues because of data, and then maybe even essentially doing some characterization of the individual student, so that even when you're looking at the data, you're marrying it with the characteristics of the student in order to discard data that may be irrelevant and add data that would be useful, which is not a skill set of a lot of the teachers out there. They haven't been taught that data logic.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it really is a different way of looking at things and kind of finding the roots of problems, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's excellent work, and the message needs to get out more about, how to think logically about application of the data, and the parameters that are sitting outside the data that are having to do with the human characteristics of that particular child. So that's awesome. So back to you, Jay. We have a couple of minutes left. So as you know, the Learning Council has been characterizing sort of the future direction of full personalization being, individual pathways, which is already, something that the virtual school does a lot of, but in a course construct way. what are your thoughts about the future of logistics around what schools are going to need if they try to remain or have to remain because there's more outbreaks or pandemic, if they have to remain this hybrid arena? What are your thoughts about logistics around making that more doable?
I think there are two things, and I'll kind of answer the second part first. You asked about personalized learning, and then kind of how do we keep the students going in this constantly changing environment? And in Georgia, that's we kind of put that at the local level because communities will need to solve that situation differently. But I do think that personalized learning and using technology is really a key, so that as students move between learning environments, whether it's face-to-face to virtual, whether it's synchronously virtual to asynchronous, the development of personalized learning models. And the grant I talked about that Georgia Virtual got, a big focus of that is on personalized learning. And so we are, over the next 3 years, going to be looking at how we actually really personalize it, not just providing choice in a matter of assignments for a student, not just maybe creating prescribed individual opportunities from a teacher personalizing it, but how we can actually look at competencies and mastery of skills and identify those to the student, the parents, and the teacher, so that students actually go through a course focusing on the items that they need most help with and just asserting other areas that they may be comfortable in. We're going to start that pilot in the spring with a proof of concept in high school biology, and hopefully provide an opportunity for students in that model next fall. And after tweaking and how that works, expand that to other courses. And that will certainly be using technology based on competencies, our open salt instance, and how we can connect learning objects and assessment to specific competencies.
Okay, so I'm making my own notes, so I can call you later, Jay, and
You
question
can.
9 more million times.
Anytime.
So I just want to say thank you so much. I know the two of you are super busy. For you to join us and give us an hour of your time is such a blessing. So I just want to say thank you effusively for being with us today and sharing. I'm going to move on to our next set of speakers, but feel free to stay and lurk if you would
absolutely.
like. And there is a workshop later on the new standards and the new academic instructional design model for the GeorgiaDay, as well as all the definitions of terms. So that will be particularly cool if you want to stay for that. So, all right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Sarah.
Data. How much are you collecting? What are you going to do with it? Billions of bits of information living in their own separate clouds. Names, numbers, words. What matters? People matter. You are charged with the world's most important mission, educating the future. You focus on that. We'll focus on giving you ownership and agency over the data. Together, we will make it meaningful for your practice. Randa Solutions. Design simply. Develop effectively. We put educators at the center of every system we build. From formative and summative assessments, educator recruitment, professional learning, educator evaluations, and licensure. Randa designs, develops, and implements software solutions to empower educators and administrators at every level. Make informed decisions based on timely, accurate information. Randa Solutions, solving data challenges for states, districts, schools, and the people they serve.